start by saying that Helen and Scott changed the way that we thought about land and our lives on the land, and they really had a lot to do with a lot of us being here in Hancock and Washington counties and elsewhere. And so you never know, but I think this is another time when people are changing, when you're here and I'm here because we see something that's not working. And we are either brave enough or stupid enough to think maybe we can change it. And it's going to be a lot of hard work. And when I look at those stone walls, you know, that you probably read their books about putting that cement and that stone in those frames and then getting it up, I mean, it just sounded very difficult. The work we have ahead is, as you know, difficult too. So what I think I'll do tonight is to do some reading and talking. And I was looking at my talk, which I type up and then I don't use, but it's just it's just a nervous tick. And it seems a little depressing. But I want to tell you, before I even start, that just like Helen and Scott Nearing, who got out of a kind of a society that they didn't like, and then tried to build one that they did like, I have found from writing this book that there are people, well, I know that they're along the Gulf of Maine in the state of Maine, but I am assuming that they're all over the world who are.
Take you on a tour of our farming experience, which runs the course of 4 decades almost. Not the talk, but our experience. So just starting, what?
I was going to tell you, well, I was going to show you which button to hit.
So in the beginning, we were living in Surrey, and we got married. Whoops. And we're longing for our own land. We lived on 100 acres and had huge gardens and rabbits and chickens. I guess we didn't have rabbits yet. Chickens and sheep and all kinds of things. And we were longing for our own land, and we were longing to farm. And we actually didn't have a clue what that was, but we thought we did. We are not from a farm background, either one of us. We grew up in the burbs, but we have had personal together experience with gardens. So in 1978, we found this beautiful 50-acre piece of land, which we knew for sale, and we bought it with 3 other people, so a couple and a young man. And our goal was to do a legal land trust. We each had an acre of land and shared the rest of the land communally. When we moved out there was one house, and the other couple took it because they were about to have a baby. And so there wasn't really much out there. 40 acres of our 50 acres, what's it doing? 40 acres of our 50 acres was in woods, and the rest was pretty overgrown. All the cleared areas had been overgrown with alders, but out we came with our 4 ducks and 6 chickens and 2 sheep and a cat and a 12 by 10 shed we built, and we lived in that for the first 6 months out on Happy Town. Which is an interesting area. It hadn't been farmed since the late 50s, but there was a very vibrant community out there, religious community, community of farms, and there was a store, and there was a school, graveyard, but there was hardly anyone out there, and the road into Ellsworth wasn't maintained in the winter, so it was pretty rustic.
All right. Well, this is a circle of educators. I wanted to bring, before we get into sort of my story and then where we go with the Learning Center, to a couple of other educators, and I don't know if you know these folks. One is Bill Bonyon. Bill Bonyon is a folk singer in 1950s. He was the singer on the green at Sturbridge Village. He was an educator, a fifth grade teacher, and when he was 70 and I was 24, he was looking for an apprentice about opening heart. One of the things Richard talked about is heart. It's sort of going to be a common theme here, the foundational part of what we're doing. And Bill was all heart, and what he believed was that singing and storylines, the traditional arts and understanding where they fit in our world, was one of the portals to heart. Jan Harmon, who passed away in '93, how many people had a Limelighters record when you were a kid? And if you had Through Children's Eyes and listened to the song Lollipop Tree, she wrote that song when she was 13. It was the only song she ever sold, and she sold it to the Limelighters, and they did what they did. She wrote the most amazing songs, and including this song, which is on the screen, and you probably can't see it, or if you can, you have better eyes than I do. And this song was written by her for Bill, not because he was going to die, which he did, but because he did sing to everybody. And so it was his song to sing to everybody. And in my life as an educator, music has been an important circle in sort of everything I do. As a community member, it's very important for our community in Down East Maine, up in Washington County. And I wanted to start singing this song that a dear old friend wrote for another dear old friend for the planet. And one of the reasons I brought it here is because I think the Nearings would have loved this song. I really do. And I wanted to go sing it for Pete Seeger, but he died before I could sing it for him. And so the chorus for this song goes like this. Let us sing, come and sing every old song you know. Though the singer may come and the singer may go, the song will shine on like a light from a star. So let's light up this dark with our singing. Let's try it again. Let us sing, come and sing every old song you know. Though the singer may come and the singer may go, the song will shine on like a light.
Warren mentioned that I was Maine's Poet Laureate, which allowed me to drive as fast as I wanted to get here. If I ever get pulled over by either a sheriff or a state police, I just tell them I'm the Poet Laureate, and they say, no problem. They said the speed must just be a metaphor. I said, that's right. So when I was appointed Poet Laureate, Walter Kamega, some of you may know him as was a state representative for Deer Isle and not Blue Hill, but Vinyl Haven, I think North Haven as well. And he invited me to give the benediction before the legislature. And you may know that before every legislative session, a member of the clergy says a benediction. You imagine if they did it before Congress, those people would be really praying. But it's a more modest prayer in Maine. Things seem okay. So I was asked to do the benediction, and I'm not a member of the clergy, although I was a comparative religion major in college, so I could know. And I got a letter from the clerk of the House that said my prayer should be brief, ecumenical, and upbeat. 3 good conditions for any prayer, I think. And I got a placard that said Clergy of the Day, and it had the date, so I could park anywhere in the State House complex for that. But only, it's like Queen for a day, only for that one day. And it was an evening session, and I was led in by the sergeant at arms. And it was like a very ceremonial thing. It was led right down to the center, and I was up on the dais, and all the members of the legislature stood up from my prayer. And then I confessed to them that I actually wasn't going to say a prayer, I was going to read a poem. But I thought that poetry and prayer had something in common, and they both slowed you down and made you pay attention. I think there's a seat right here if you want to get called on and have to answer questions. Actually, I'm kind of nervous because you guys are like so close to me. Actually, there's another seat over here. You know what? So they all stood up, and I was trying to think of the poem to read them, and my wife, Susan Webster, suggested this one. It's about making maple syrup, which seemed like if there's a distillation, legislation is also kind of distillation. You know, you get down to something from a lot to a little. It's called Essence. We hand crank the drill through the maple's bark, pound the metal tap into light inner layers where the sap begins to flow. This lifeblood that will make the leaves unfurl in another 2 months, delicately lined like the hands of a newborn. But now we step over last year's leaves and the years before that in patchy snow to gather what we have taken from the tree, the gallons of sap we boil down on our stovetop, moisture running off the kitchen windows as we get down to its essence, over 3 gallons to make a cup of syrup, so sweet.
And unfortunately, it is also a anniversary, 100-year anniversary of the Chicago race riots, which went on from the 27th of July until the 8th of August. And in that riot, which was started by a teenage Afro-American boy was swimming in the Great Lakes, and he drifted over into a white section, and a white man threw stones at him. To get away from the stones, he pushed off from a railroad tie that he was hanging onto and drowned. From there, the riots ensued. First, the blacks tried to get the police to do something. They wouldn't do anything. They let the white man go. The African Americans went in. There were fights that were initiated by the African Americans. The whites fought back. It moved into the neighborhoods. At this point, you're also having, because of the First World War, the great migration to the north, to all the factories in the north, because of all the drain of men into the military to fight in the war that saved us democracy. And so there was the great migration, and there was tensions in housing. So before this all happened, these things just don't come out of anywhere. From July of 1917 till March of 1921, there were 58 bombings of Afro-American houses in Chicago alone. And that was happening all over the North with this great migration. And unfortunately, this outbreak that we're having the anniversary of right now, 23 African Americans were killed, 15 whites were killed, so that's 38 total. 537 were injured, 178 whites, 342 Afro-Americans. And what really was one of the most damaging things for the Afro-American community is that 1,000 houses burned. So again, an unfortunate 100th anniversary, and unfortunately still timely in our time, especially after the great leader of the Western world spoke down over the past 2 weeks to the 4 representatives in the Congress because of their race. And Elijah Cummings was another one that he attacked. And then the civil rights leaders. Welcome to the brave new world. So, shifting gears, what I want to do is give a quick timeline of what's going on in the world. and with Scott. And then I want to get to the charges against Scott. And then what I've done is I've gone through
Ted Ames, a refugee commercial fisherman, and I do historical fisheries ecology as well. And Robin and I have split this into two pieces. I'm going to talk about how the Gulf of Maine functions and if and whether the sky is falling. And Robin is going to share with you the sorts of things that we have been trying to get accomplished through the Resource Center, and I think we've made a very good start in things, but you'll be a better judge of that perhaps. This is about sustainability in coastal fisheries in the Gulf of Maine. So, first a brief outline of Gulf of Maine ecosystems, then a short talk about climate change effects on various Gulf of Maine species, and then a closer look at whales, lobsters, and fish. First though, a look at Gulf of Maine circulation. And if you look at this arrow here and the two green arrows coming from the Newfoundland shore is the Labrador Current, and a filament of that goes into the Gulf of Maine, makes a U-turn, and you see a long arrow going up into the Bay of Fundy, and a second arrow making a sharp right-hand turn going in, which is Scotian shelf water, which is slightly warmer and slightly richer in nutrients than the Labrador Current itself. It enters the Gulf of Maine, and then as you can see, it forms a large gyre. Actually, there are two. The innermost one is called Maine Coastal Current, and it basically wheels around Jordan Basin, the eastern large basin in the Gulf of Maine, while the other continues on through and exits the Gulf of Maine via the Great South Channel with a little filament going in to the north side of Georges Bank. And Georges Bank is absolutely cool because it has a circular current pattern on itself. So the tide comes and goes on Georges.
On a book about the 5 eras in U.S. history where people went back to the land in particularly large numbers. And what I was interested in finding out was not only what the commonalities were, presuming that there were some, but were there specific interpersonal links among them, and were there any unexpected kinds of connections among them. And so the thing that I want to talk about for a little while tonight is about food and food rules. And I'll focus more on the nearings, and then hopefully as a group we can kind of expand it out from there. Because one of the things that I found was that all of the people who I have been looking at closely had 2 food issues in common. The first one was that they worried that commercially available food was often tainted or adulterated. And even if it wasn't literally tainted, they worried that it was processed and stored in such ways that it made it relatively nutritionless. The second thing that they, and that didn't surprise me in terms of the last 50 years or so, I was really surprised to discover that it was true even back in the 1840s. Yeah. The second thing that they have in common is that they all have the idea that eating right is essential to being free. They don't think it's a benefit of being free. Instead, they think that it's something that ensures and enforces their freedom. They don't all agree about what eating right means, but in each of the generations, part of what it means is eating in a way that helps them to steer clear of whatever the largest injustices are in their particular society. The other thing that it does is it helps to reinforce their identity, particularly if they're in a collective situation rather than an individual situation. So tonight, I want to talk a little bit about what Scott and Helen have had to say about food, and then I want to tease out a few issues related to the really sad state of food and food regulation in the early decades of the 20th century. I'm going to try and keep it pretty short so that we have plenty of time to talk at the end. And so the talk is called Cooking in Helen's Kitchen. Scott and Helen, as many of you know, wanted to live in an egalitarian way, but they didn't quite free themselves from the gender norms of their era. Helen took on most of the tasks that are stereotypically associated with women, like cleaning the house and preparing the meals and managing the household budget. However, as many of you also know, Helen was not interested in cooking. She made such extremely basic meals that she thought that frying or mashing potatoes involved too much work. She would prefer to eat them raw. She didn't want to make anything that took more than a half an hour to prepare, and she and Scott regularly had mono meals that were made of just a single food. They fasted regularly.
Melissa Gates, and I serve as the Surfrider Foundation's Northeast Regional Manager. And I live actually in Cushing, Maine, which is, for folks who might not be familiar, on the St. George Estuary, just south of Thomaston. So I'm a Mainer, not from this neck of the woods, but I did attend College of the Atlantic. So I was here for a stint. And Surfrider Foundation is an environmental nonprofit. We are nationally based, but we also have chapters right here in New England. Our focus is really grassroots, meaning we are the activists and the people who live by the ocean and want to take action to protect it. So we're surfers and kayakers and sandcastle builders, you name it. We're folks who use the ocean and beach in a non-consumptive, this can be a little wonky, non-consumptive, low impact, recreational capacity.